that Emerson quote, things are in the saddle and they ride us. And we back, baby, with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. I don't know if my producer Nick dials down the volume when I do that near the microphone, but I hope he does for your ear's sake. And if he doesn't, maybe it wakes you up. Anything that helps. And today's reflection is on our possessions. Thoreau had this great, no, it was Emerson. Emerson had this great quote that things are in the saddle and they ride us. Pointing towards that old adage that our possessions are not owned by us, they own us. Swami gives the example of the man that has the donkey and is tethered to the donkey by the rope is as much owned by the donkey as the donkey is by the man. You are walking around with that thing and you are tethered to it. Of course, you can get into all this dismantling of that of like, well, you can leave the donkey and you can tie it up on a post and walk away, but it still sticks with you mentally. Our possessions, yeah, you can walk away from the nice car, but it's still on your mind. This happened literally when I bought a 1960 Volkswagen pickup truck. This was about 3 years ago. Got it for Magic Mind. Well, I rationalized it for Magic Mind to be the vehicle that would be out there on Abbot Kinney, like the hippest street in Los Angeles, for sampling, giving away Magic Mind. And we do use it for that. But I bought this thing after 7-8 months of looking around, of having this watchful eye for what could be the right old Volkswagen pickup truck, and found the perfect one. Amazing, immaculate, just from 100 feet out, you want to go over to that vehicle. It's so beautiful. And yet within 3 days, I completely regretted it. If I didn't have the company rationalization and the partial use for it, I would have sold it. I would have asked for my money back. What happened was I went back and forth. Like I said, searched for 7 months, but even when I found the right one, I was like, I don't know if this is worth it. Ultimately rationalized it. 1, for Magic Mind, 2, because, it's going to hold its value. It might even increase in value. Bought it, and within about an hour, I was like, holy shit, this is a pain to drive. No power steering, stick shift, and it's like a lawnmower engine. Very, very weak engine in these 60-year-old vehicles. I should have known all of these things. I mean, I drove it around for about 15, 20 minutes, basically to a mechanic to get them to give their opinion. They said, it's in stellar condition. Not thinking for myself and driving it around for those 15, 20 minutes thinking like, yeah, I can trust my own judgment. This is really hard to drive this thing around. But even more than that, after buying it and owning it for about an hour, the previous owner, his name is Travis, and I called him up and I said, hey, should I get like a one of those locks? What are those things called? The clubs? Should I get one of those club things to lock it when I park it in the street overnight? And he said, what? No, you can't park that thing on the street. I was like, I can't park this thing on the street overnight? He was like, man, I'd be careful parking that on the street at any point in the day in Los Angeles. And I was like, what? Am I hearing you right? I can't park this. Basically, just can't park this out and about in LA. He goes, I'd just be really careful doing anything like that, because there are people that just drive around looking for cars like that. Then they alert people with a tow truck and they text them and say, here, I found one. And then they come and steal it. And my mind was melted. I was like, I had never considered this. I thought it was just bliss on the other side of possession. And I was like, wait, I can't park this on the street. He's like, man, do you not have a safer place to park it? I thought, well, we could move things around, park it behind our gate. I could look into a parking garage nearby. Did all of those things. Found a parking garage. It's currently in its like third different parking garage. But within 3 days, I was like, I've got to walk 4 blocks to use this. Barely makes it on the highway, taps out at about 55 miles an hour. So hard to drive. And even taking our daughters out for a spin in it, unless I park it back in that parking garage, going to like lunch with this thing, comes with this crazy albatross around my mind's neck, thinking about, okay, well, what's going to happen while we're getting this lunch? And none of the juice is worth the squeeze with this thing. Within 3 days, it was so clear. Personally, at least. With Magic Mind, it does solve its barely, still in the rationalization area code, barely solves the problem if people see it from 100 feet away and they do want to come over and check it out. It has that eye candy appeal, but that juice is still barely worth the squeeze on that front. But certainly on the personal side, that exhausted for the rest of my life and the untold lives in front of me. I will never buy a cool classic car. That possession absolutely owned me every second I was trying to squeeze any value out of that possession. Still does with where we park it now. There's we have a little tent thing that we put over this tarp that's built around its shape. And not only does it kind of hide the truck, it also makes it a perfect tent and covering for a homeless person to sleep in it every night, which we discovered not too long ago was happening. And basically living in it underneath that tarp in between the windows in time that we were using it during the week. That Emerson quote, things are in the saddle and they ride us. I think that I'm driving this thing and owning this thing, and yet it is absolutely mentally owning me. And it's the same for all of our stuff. But let me be extremely clear. This philosophy is not against possessions. It's a wild misinterpretation that a philosophical approach should be this Spartan ascetic approach. It is the middle path in between asceticism, in between indulgence, and neither of the two, but on that razor's edge in the middle. That is where we're all called within this philosophy, within the middle path being famous articulation within Buddhism. So it is not saying to not have possessions. It's just saying to not be owned by them. And if there are these possessions that own us, like a drug habit or an impractical car, or a gaudy possession that garners the worst kind of attention from our community, envy or disdain, instead of building stronger bonds with our community, it separates our possessions or purchases or pursuits. Sometimes they separate us further from our community. By all means, if those possessions, if we're talking about those possessions, then yeah, maybe it's best to not have them whatsoever. But to say it again, this philosophy is not saying to not have possessions. It's just saying to not be possessed by them. Own it, but instead of worrying about it being scratched anytime that you park that nice car on the on the street. Own it, but don't be owned by it. Have it, but happiness is not carrying either way. Be fine if it goes through just the cost of living, getting scratched, getting bumped, getting little dents here and there because you live in a city. Have the proper assessment of what's going to happen with that purchase. That, there's the cost of living. It might get bumped, scratched, dented. Also the proper assessment of, okay, whatever joy this brings me, it's going to be fleeting. It will not be a permanent joy. Think of all of those things that ever got delivered from your online purchases and delusions that it was this, man, when this comes in, I'm going to be so happy. Just run the audit on how many times that happened. It got delivered. That delivery date finally came. The package was there on the steps. You opened it up and it wasn't completeness that we thought it was going to be. Have the proper assessment to look at that next purchase, knowing that it's not, probably isn't going to be that completeness that we thought all those other purchases were going to be. It's probably just going to be, well, a continuation of fleeting joy. Have a proper assessment. Feel free to go wild. As Shakespeare says, rich but not gaudy. Know your level. If you can afford the nice car, Swami will say this all the time. If you can afford the nice car, get the nice car. Rich but not gaudy. Don't make it a slap in the face to your community of, hey, everyone with maximum volume, look at how well I'm doing. Because that will come back to haunt you. But if you can afford the comfortable car, by all means, get the comfortable car. If you can afford the bigger car, the nice car for a family of 5 or a family of 6, get that bigger, nicer car. No need to be an ascetic. But don't get into the territory of gaudiness. But by all means, do not be possessed by our possessions. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.